September 11, 2001 was one of the worst days in American history. According to CNN, it marked the deadliest terror attack ever on U.S. soil, as almost 3,000 Americans were killed. Important buildings that served as financial and political centers of the United States, as well as symbols of American freedom and pride, were attacked and destroyed. It was a day of fear, confusion, and tragedy, and left Americans everywhere fearful for their safety and the future of their country. If you're an American, it's likely 9/11 affected you or your family in some way. If you are too young to remember the day, ask a parent or an older relative about their memories of 9/11. Innocent, everyday Americans were killed while at their jobs or while flying on commercial flights. What started out as an ordinary day changed the lives of everyone involved and the future of the United States forever. I was born and raised in Long Island, New York. My identity as a person is largely tied to my upbringing in New York and the culture and everyday life that I live as a New Yorker. 9/11 and its effects are felt every day throughout New York, and like many other New York families, the day had a deep personal effect on mine. My family described the feeling of disbelief and shock when recalling the day, describing it as the worst day of their lives. The sentiment is the same for my friends and their families, and for everyone who lived in New York at the time. The American people were shocked watching the events of September 11 unfold, and once the fact that it was a terrorist attack became clear, the emotions quickly became those of fear. Nobody felt safe, and nobody could quite understand what had truly unfolded. The country was under attack, and Americans needed reassurance and an idea of how to move forward following this tragedy. As the President and the leader of the United States, it was President Bush's responsibility to do just that. Bush needed to use his authority to reassure Americans, to convey to them that they were safe, that the United States knew how to react, and that they needed to move forward united and strong in order to overcome the tragedy. The first part to understanding Bush's speech and his approach is the historical context of 9/11. The attack was the worst in American history. Bush's role as the president during this time put him in an unprecedented situation. There was no clear answer on how to move forward, but it seems Bush based his speech off of those of other great American leaders in times of crisis, like Reagan's Challenger speech. The historical context of the event led to Bush's approach of opening his speech by describing the severity of the tragedy. This aspect is discussed in Praise, Blame, and Advocacy, an examination of President George W. Bush's post-9/11 discourse on the rhetorical genres that define it by Joshua Eubanks. Bush starts his speech by reflecting on historical context of the tragedy by saying thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. This line attests to the death toll of 9/11 and alludes to its historical context as the worst attack in American history. Bush goes on to say, today, our nation saw evil, the very worst of human nature, which again analyzes the event through the lenses of history. He makes it clear that 9/11 marks one of the worst days in American history, and this sets the tone for the rest of his speech. The next part of Bush's speech is directed at his audience. Whom are the American people? The people of the United States had just witnessed one of the worst attacks in the country's history, and they are in a state of shock, confusion, and fear. Bush's message to his audience aims first to reassure them, and second, to unite them as one, which he feels is the best way for the nation to respond in the face of adversity. Bush first tries to reassure the American people by describing the response of the United States. He starts by saying, immediately following the attack, I implemented our government's emergency response plans. Our military is powerful, and it is prepared. Our emergency teams are working in New York City and Washington, D.C. to help with local rescue efforts. Our first priority is to help those who have been injured, and to take every precaution to protect our citizens at home and around the world from further attacks. According to Charting the Language of Leadership, a methodological investigation of President Bush and the Crisis of 9/11 by Jeffrey Coles, this serves as reassurance to his audience because it is evidence that the United States knows how to react. People feel safer knowing that the country has already responded to the emergency, and Bush adds in the quote about the military being strong and prepared as a way to make the audience feel even more safe and secure. By prioritizing the safety of the audience, Bush effectively restores some sense of calmness and order to the country and its people. He also says, the functions of our government continue without interruption. Our financial institutions remain strong, and the American economy will be open for business as well. This shows that the United States, despite the horrors of the attack, were not shaken, and they are strong enough to continue on. Again, this lessens the sense of chaos and reassures the people of the United States. Bush then attempts to unite the American people and make it clear that a strong America is the best way to respond to the attack. By saying, "I appreciate so much that the members of Congress who have joined me in strongly condemning these attacks." Bush blurs party lines. He makes no distinction between Republicans and Democrats, and instead alludes to all members of Congress together, and how all of them are united in their condemnation of the attack. This conveys a message to the American people at home that the split between Republicans and Democrats is no more following 9/11, that they need to put their differences aside and unite as one whole America. Similarly, Bush says, "These acts shatter steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve. America was targeted for the attack because we're the brightest beacon for freedom and opportunity in the world, and no one will keep that light from shining." According to a defining presidential moment, 9/11 and the Rally Effect by James Schubert, this message helps bring about a sense of American pride that will naturally unite the country. Bush points to the fundamental American ideals of freedom and opportunity, which in turn lead to a sense of nationalism that will serve to unify his audience. In an analysis of President Bush's post-9/11 speech, Bush's role as the speaker is also discussed as important in the context of the speech. He is speaking to the country from a position of power. As the president, Bush is an authority figure and someone who the American people are looking to during this time of distress. Bush makes sure to maintain a calm, confident demeanor. This helps to reassure the American people as they echo his demeanor. If Bush, as the leader of the country, is calm and confident during this time of distress, so should they be. Analyzing the speech as a whole, Bush's purpose is clear. He wants to reassure his audience and unite them. Bush believes that a country is the best response. Bush believes that a united country is the best response. Americans United After 9/11, What Did We Rip Back Apart by Philip Bump talks about how Bush's powerful rhetoric led to a united America. By using his rhetoric to unite the American people, he can create a strong, resilient nation, which is the best situation in response to the attack. This is clear through the rhetoric that he used that I mentioned earlier, talking about the country's organized response to the attack and the prepared military to serve to reassure the audience. He also mentions foreign support by saying, "I thank many world leaders who I have called on to offer their condolences and assistance. America and our friends and allies join with all of those who want peace and security in the world, and we stand together to win the war against terrorism." This again reassures Americans by informing them that they have support of their allies around the globe. Bush mentions that American values of freedom and opportunity. Bush's mention of American values of freedom and opportunity and his mention of Congress uniting to condemn the attack also unifies the nation. Lastly, the occasion plays a role in Bush's speech. Similar to his historical context, Bush's rhetoric is guided by the tragedy and horrors of the occasion. Bush speaks about the occasion by first describing the people who were the victims, by saying, "Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist attacks. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices, secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms, dads, friends, and neighbors." This line shows that the attack affected everyday, ordinary Americans like you and I, showing that the occasion was something that could have happened to anyone. He also says, "Tonight, I ask for your prayers, for all those who grieve, for the children whose worlds have been shattered, for all whose sense of safety and security has been threatened." This line offers condolences to the victims, again reflecting on the horrors of the tragedy. Overall, Bush's use of rhetoric, analyzed through the historical context, his target audience, his role as the speaker, the occasion of the speech, shows that his purpose was to reassure and calm the people of the United States, and then to unify them as a strong, resilient nation who can rise up and respond to the attack. Bush concludes his speech with a powerful line that summarizes his purpose. "This is a day when all Americans from every walk of life unite in our resolve for justice and peace. America has stood down enemies before, and we will do so this time. None of us will ever forget this day, yet we go forward to defend freedom and all that is good and just in our world." Thank you.